In 1975, a film came out that reached into a very old, very deep part of the human brain and squeezed. Jaws. A single great white shark terrorizing a beach town, and by the end of that summer, half the country was afraid to go in the water. It's one of the most effective horror films ever made, and it built its entire nightmare around one animal: the shark. The silent hunter beneath the surface, the fin, the teeth. And it worked because sharks are genuinely frightening. But here's a thought I want to sit with today. As terrifying as that fictional shark was, it was the wrong animal. Because if you actually go looking through the history of the oceans for the most nightmarish predator that ever lived, the thing that truly ruled the seas as an apex hunter, you don't find a shark at the top. You find a whale. Now, I know how that sounds. We've been trained to think of whales as the gentle giants of the sea, the great baleen filter feeders drifting through clouds of krill, singing their haunting songs, the very symbol of ocean serenity. And most of them are exactly that. But it was not always so. Because for a long stretch of the ocean's history, the word whale would have meant something else entirely. It would have meant the single most dangerous thing in the water. A hunter that makes the shark from Jaws look like a warm-up act. So today, let me show you what the ocean was like when the apex predators weren't sharks. They were whales. And they were monsters. To understand how we got here, you have to know one strange fact about whales. They used to walk. Whales evolved from small, hoofed, land-dwelling mammals that tens of millions of years ago waded back into the water and never came out. And over millions of years, as they committed fully to the sea, their bodies transformed, legs shrinking to flippers, bodies stretching and streamlining. But here's the key point for our purposes. In that transition, before they became the gentle filter feeders, they went through a phase, a long, toothy, carnivorous phase. And the first true king of that phase appeared around 40 million years ago in the warm seas of the Eocene. Its name is Basilosaurus. And that name is itself a fossil of a mistake. It means king lizard, because when its long serpentine bones were first dug up, scientists were convinced they'd found a giant marine reptile, a sea monster in the old mould. They hadn't. They'd found a whale. But you can forgive them, because Basilosaurus looked nothing like the whales we know. It was long and eel-like, up to around 60 feet, with a slender, snaking body totally unlike the bulky whales of today. And at the front of that body was a mouth that meant business. Not the baleen sieve of a modern giant, but jaws lined with sharp, robust teeth, some pointed for gripping, some serrated for slicing. This was the apex predator of its world, and it ate whatever it wanted. Sharks, big fish, and crucially, other marine mammals. And we don't have to guess about that, because we've found the evidence in its stomach and written on the bones of its victims. In particular, we've found the skulls of a smaller whale called Dorudon, Basilosaurus's contemporary, with bite marks and breakage that match the jaws of Basilosaurus exactly, concentrated on the head. In other words, Basilosaurus was hunting other whales by crushing their skulls. Studies of its bite force put it among the most powerful of any known animal, strong enough to shatter bone. So the very first great whale was not a gentle giant. It was a 60-foot skull-crushing hunter of other whales. The oceans, it turns out, started the whale story in the worst possible way. Now, Basilosaurus eventually faded, and as the ages rolled on, most whales went the other direction, toward filter feeding, toward size without ferocity, toward the gentle giants. The baleen whales rose, the modern sperm whale evolved its bizarre, blunt head and its diet of deep-sea squid. And the ocean, you might think, became a calmer place. It did not. Because around 10 million years ago, in the Miocene, the whale lineage produced its masterpiece of horror. The animal that is, to my mind, the closest thing the real world has ever offered to the monster from Jaws, except many times larger and many times worse. Its name is Leviathan, and that name was chosen with intent. It comes from Leviathan, the biblical sea monster, and the species name honors Herman Melville, the author of Moby Dick. The scientists who named it wanted you to understand from the name alone exactly what they'd found. Leviathan was a sperm whale. But throw out your image of the modern sperm whale, that placid, wrinkled, deep diver that hunts squid in the dark. Leviathan was built on the same basic body, around 13 to 17 meters long, so roughly 45 to 57 feet, about the size of a modern male sperm whale. But where the modern sperm whale is gentle, Leviathan was the apex predator of its entire ocean. And the difference was in the mouth. Because the modern sperm whale has functional teeth really only in its lower jaw, and small ones at that. It doesn't need them, it sucks in squid. Leviathan had massive, fully functional, interlocking teeth in both jaws. And when I say massive, I need you to understand the scale. Leviathan's teeth reached over 36 centimeters long. That's more than a foot. 14 inches of tooth. These are, as far as we know, the largest biting teeth of any animal that has ever lived, setting aside things like tusks that aren't used for eating. Bigger than the teeth of a T-Rex. A jaw lined top and bottom with 14-inch interlocking spikes. And those teeth weren't for show. They were forward angled and interlocking, a design built for one thing: seizing large, powerful, curved-bodied prey and not letting go. Prey like other whales. Leviathan is what paleontologists call a macroraptorial sperm whale, a raptorial hyperpredatory hunter. And its main prey is thought to have been the medium-sized baleen whales of its day, animals in the 23 to 33 foot range. Let that sink in. Its prey were whales the size of the shark from Jaws. Leviathan didn't hunt things the size of the movie monster. It hunted things bigger, and it hunted them the way a killer whale hunts a seal. And its bite has been described by the people who study it with a phrase I can't improve on: the biggest tetrapod bite ever found. Tetrapod meaning every four-limbed animal, every dinosaur, every mammal, every reptile that has ever lived on land or returned to the sea. Of all of them, Leviathan may have had the most powerful bite of any of them. A short, broad, reinforced snout packing enormous jaw muscles, driving those foot-long teeth together with staggering force. But here's the detail that elevates Leviathan from big, scary whale to genuine nightmare. Because it was a sperm whale, it kept the sperm whale toolkit. That great bulbous forehead, which in modern sperm whales houses the spermaceti organ used for echolocation. Leviathan had it too. Which means this thing didn't just blunder around hoping to bump into prey. It hunted with biosonar. It could scan the dark water ahead of it, build a sound picture of everything around it, and pinpoint its target from a distance before closing in. A 57-foot predator with the largest teeth in history, the most powerful bite of any four-limbed animal, and a built-in targeting system. The shark from Jaws was a blind ambush hunter by comparison. And here's the part that ties the whole story together. Because Leviathan did not have the ocean to itself. It shared its seas with another legendary monster, one you've almost certainly heard of, the megalodon, the largest shark that ever lived. And for a window of time, these two titans, the giant shark and the giant predatory whale, patrolled the same waters, hunted the same prey, and very likely came into direct competition, possibly even conflict. Megalodon probably had the stronger bite and a bit more length, but Livyatan had the intelligence, the echolocation, the social behavior, because, like sperm whales today, it may well have hunted in coordinated pods of 8, 10, 11 individuals. And that's a genuinely chilling upgrade on the Jaws premise. The movie gave us one shark, acting alone. Picture instead a pod of 57-foot Livyatan, a coordinated, echolocating, whale-eating pack, working together the way orcas do, each one armed with the biggest bite in the history of life. If you wanted to design the ultimate ocean predator, you would struggle to beat it. So why aren't they still here? Why did the reign of the killer whales end and hand the oceans back to the gentle giants and the sharks? The answer seems to be the climate. As the Miocene gave way to cooler times, the world changed, and the medium-sized baleen whales that were Livyatan's primary food began to decline and shift in distribution and size. And a hyper-specialized apex predator, an animal built entirely around hunting large whales, is desperately vulnerable when its prey disappears. The same cooling squeezed Megalodon too, and so both of these titans, the shark and the whale, faded from the oceans at roughly the same time, leaving the seas to the survivors, the smaller, nimbler predators, and the great filter feeders who had chosen peace over power. Which brings us back to where we started, because that's why, when we think of whales today, we think of gentleness. The monsters lost, the peaceful ones inherited the ocean. But it was not always so, and it did not have to be. For tens of millions of years, the scariest thing in the sea wasn't the shark. It was the whale. So the next time you watch Jaws and that fin cuts through the water and the music starts, just remember, the filmmakers picked the shark because the shark is what we fear. But if they'd wanted the real monster, the true apex terror of the ancient oceans, they'd have needed a much bigger boat, because they'd have been up against a whale. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep looking up, and maybe stay out of the deep water.